Welcome to a conversation that's been going on for some time about how best to conserve Faversham for the future, but also to get some control over the planning and the allocation of housing within the parish boundary. This conversation started 5 or so years ago with a request to the town council, the town meeting, that the town council consider developing a neighbourhood plan to give us some control over the future of our town. It's now time to continue that conversation. We've been through a process of numerous consultations. There is now a final version of the neighbourhood plan, and it's going to a referendum in the town on the 21st of November. So this is really the time when we need to be discussing whether this plan, which is, I believe, the best that we can get within the context of national policy and Swales bearing fruits, local plan. This neighbourhood plan is not the local plan. It relates only to development within the parish boundary, and the policies in the neighbourhood plan apply to all the sites within the parish boundary. Now, Faversham's future, for whom I am recording this, is not a decision-making body. In the referendum, everyone's vote is equal. No one on the neighbourhood plan steering group or on the council got everything they wanted. It is inevitably a compromise, and it has to comply with national policy and with Swales planning policies. However, the neighbourhood plan that we now have from 23 to 38 is now final. If we pass the plan at the referendum by giving it a majority, it will be the neighbourhood plan for 2023 to 2038. It is final. It cannot any longer be altered without beginning the whole process again. It went through the Urgent Decisions Committee at Swale on May the 22nd. The referendum version was published on October the 14th. The referendum is on November the 21st, and I'm urging you to vote yes to protect Faversham. It, of course, is not a perfect plan, as I've said, it's a compromise, but it's the best that we could get in the circumstances in which we are currently operating. So please consider carefully your view of this neighbourhood plan. I believe it's the best that we could get in the circumstances, and I urge you to vote in support of it. There will be a public meeting on November the 6th. More details soon on the Faversham Future website and on Facebook. So the neighbourhood plan is really designed to give us the future we want. This presentation was initially made in a conversation at the Alexander Centre in June. I've updated it to make this recording. The neighbourhood plan basically provides a powerful set of tools for us, the residents of Faversham, to decide the development priorities for Faversham, for our community. The neighbourhood plan has to be subject to a referendum. It will give the town a degree of control over, among other things, the type and location of new housing that takes place within the parish boundary. This presentation was initially given by Harold Goodwin, myself, and I was co-opted onto the steering group, and Matthew Hatchwell made a major contribution amongst many others, Faversham experts who contributed. NPPFs come thick and fast. The new government has an NPPF currently out for consultation, but we need to be clear that neighbourhood plans are still a strong part of the national planning policy framework, essentially central government's strategy for planning for the country as a whole. A neighbourhood plan is defined as a plan prepared by a parish council or a neighbourhood forum for a designated neighbourhood area. In law, this is described as a neighbourhood development plan. So what we're discussing now, between now and the referendum, is the neighbourhood development plan for Faversham. It says very clearly in the NPF that where a planning application conflicts with an up-to-date neighbourhood plan, permission should not usually be granted. And it will be for us to ensure that Swale's decision making in the planning department complies with the Faversham Neighbourhood Plan. The neighbourhood plan is inevitably a compromise. There are lots of different interests in Faversham, but it also needs to meet the basic conditions laid out in the regulatory framework. There is a presumption in favour of sustainable development. The neighbourhood plan has to have regard to national policy and guidance, and it must be in general conformity with the adopted strategic local planning policies, which means that for us in Faversham, it needs to align with the current local plan, which is bearing fruits, which has been in place 2017 to 2031, and the emerging local plan, which is obviously updating bearing fruits and responding to the new national government's planning targets. The plan has had to be checked by an independent examiner to ensure compliance, and I'm pleased to say that it passed that, and it has passed the Swale test of them agreeing to put it to referendum. The referendum is run by the district council, the local planning authority, which in our case is Swale. Swale's briefing to members on the 22nd of May said that neighbourhood plans are written by the local community and help get the right types of development in the right place. It is for those producing the plan to decide on its scope and content as a planning document. I'd like to emphasise that what they said is that if successful at referendum, a neighbourhood plan will become part of the statutory development plan for the area. Nobody, of course, will like everything in the neighbourhood plan, but it is the most important way we have of securing some control over how our town develops and over what we leave for our children and our children's children. We need to be very aware, though, and I ask you to be aware, the referendum is not the place for a protest vote. The question each of us has to ask is, on balance, do we think the policies in the neighbourhood plan will assist us, the citizens of Faversham, to protect what is special about our place and to develop it sustainably? It has been 5 years since we started this process. We asked for it in 2019. We now finally have got to the referendum. If you want to look back at all the stages of consultation, the website address is there for you to look. The Town Council isn't permitted to campaign for the approval of the neighbourhood plan. The Faversham Society has not yet determined its view. This is still a public information conversation. It's not a decision-making meeting. The decisions will be made by every citizen of Faversham, every resident, on the register to vote at the referendum on November the 21st. You can see that there's a wealth of information on the Faversham Town Council website. It's all there for you to look at if you wish. It's been a long and very educational process for those of us who've seen it through. On the right hand side of this slide, you can see the parish boundary there in red. And as you can see, it crosses slightly over the M2 and out onto the marshes. And the east and west, it is not the whole of the impact of housing around Faversham. Decisions outside of the parish boundary are made entirely by Swale in accordance with the local plan, which has yet to be discussed. But there will be a new local plan at some point in the future. For now, we're dealing with the situation as it is, and the local plan that we're operating to is bearing fruits. So the aims of the neighbourhood plan are clearly set out in the in the version which is going to referendum. It's about promoting the vitality and viability of the town centre for us, support local housing growth to meet the diverse needs of our local community, more sustainable living and working patterns, promoting sustainable transport and active travel, protecting Faversham's green spaces and the natural environment, promoting sustainable design, but complementing Faversham's locally distinctive sense of place, and to preserve or enhance Faversham's heritage and to promote heritage-led development. And on the right-hand side of this slide, you can see the list of policies which apply across the whole of the parish. Everywhere within the parish boundary is subject to the policies which are set out there. And I'd urge you to go and have a look at those policies which you have a particular interest in. The neighbourhood plan is, of course, a compromise. Landowners are constrained by needing planning permission, but planners can't tell them what to do. We, of course, have competing community interests. Planning is largely about land use. So the neighbourhood plan can't solve the problems of the availability of hospitals, dentists, doctors, nor can it solve the problems in our schools, the availability of school places. That's a KCC responsibility. They are required to provide a school place for every child. And we can't solve the problem of the highways, which again is a KCC responsibility. We are largely concerned with land use within the parish boundary, and you can see the range of institutions involved in affecting the future of Faversham. We are a small part of a national policy for planning and a national planning framework, but within those constraints we have been able, through the neighbourhood plan, to achieve some, I think, significant constraints on what can be done to us by others. The housing issue is clearly in the front of everybody's mind. We were asked to deliver 219 new homes over the planned period. Abbey Fields and Ham Road are not allocated for development. If this neighbourhood plan is passed at the referendum, the threat to Abbey Fields and Ham Road is taken away. There will not be development on Abbey Fields and Ham Road until there is a new neighbourhood plan at some point in the future. So for the foreseeable future, we will have stopped development on Abbey Fields and Ham Road. You'll see on the right a list of the sites where we have, as the steering group, now as the town council, and just gone through Swale. These are the sites which are designated for some development, and you can see within the referendum version of the neighbourhood plan the detailed prescription that we put in place for what development should look like on those sites. So again, if you're interested in any of those sites in particular, take a look at the neighbourhood plan. It's all spelt out there, and Swale will be required to make its decision about planning applications on those allocated sites within the neighbourhood plan in the light and to comply with the policies in our neighbourhood plan. There's a whole lot on the implications of housing development for transport infrastructure. Development inevitably generates additional journeys. It will create more traffic. We tried to counter that with opportunities to develop active transport and travel within the parish. We sought to provide better pedestrian and cycle links. We said that the development must be designed to accommodate the needs of people with different mobilities, people who are, if you like, differently abled, perhaps with impaired vision or unable to walk or unable to walk very far. We've sought to develop and deliver storage for cycles and so on, electric charging vehicles for staff. Air quality remains an important issue on the A2 at Ospringe, and in our view, development to the east of the town is to be preferred in order to reduce traffic flows at Ospringe. On the environment, the emerging local plan describes how Faversham is constrained, particularly to the northwest and southwest, by high-level biodiversity designations, by land which is at high risk of flooding, by heritage assets and landscape designations. Flood risk remains a major issue, and we're very concerned about the future of the chalk streams and of Faversham Creek. Water quality is important in the town, and we've got a lot into the neighbourhood plan about the green and blue habitat corridors. You can see them here on the map. You can see the principal habitat corridors there marked out with the dotted red lines, the green spaces and the blue spaces. We are privileged to live in a remarkably environmentally friendly town. Not perhaps as much as all of us would want, or certainly not as much as I would want, but we need to make sure that we conserve what we have and improve it where we can. So the neighbourhood plan seeks to protect the designated and non-designated landscape and habitats, to promote net gains in biodiversity, and to ensure that development does not impact adversely on the risk of flooding or on air quality. And you can see there that we're right up against the North Downs core habitat zone and the swale. So in terms of the policies, development should have no adverse impacts on green or blue infrastructure. So that's seeking to look after the tidal marshes, the chalk streams, the Westbrook, Crooksditch, All Creek and Thorn Creek. Major development should include positive features so that we get biodiversity net gain. And the loss of green or natural landscapes should be balanced by the provision of green infrastructure, landscaping, planting and so on. Trees, wood and hedges should be retained, be incorporated into the layout of new developments. Where loss of trees, woodland or hedges is unavoidable, replacements need to be provided. Development should not cause harm to or lead to the loss of the best and most versatile agricultural land, wherever that's possible. And landscaping and planting should use native species or other species with a high value for wildlife. We protected some new local green spaces. This does not include all the existing local green spaces. These are the new ones. And there are sections in the neighbourhood plan on public rights of way, on flooding, on air quality, on renewable energy, and a whole policy on Faversham Creek. Debbie Stebbing, the independent examiner, who finally approved the plan before it went to Swale for their agreement to adopt and put the plan to referendum, he said, in my assessment, the plan reflects the land use aspirations and objectives of the Faversham community for the future planning of their area to 2038. The output, he says, is a plan which should help guide the area's development over that period, making a positive contribution to informing decision-making on planning applications by Swale Borough Council. So what happens next? The final stage in adopting this neighbourhood plan for Faversham is the referendum on the 21st of November. Your opportunity to give your view on the work we've done over the last 5 years on your behalf and with your inputs. It's 5 years of work. There have been many opportunities for public engagement. We finally have a plan. We have just over 5 weeks to discuss the plan, what it means for us and to the future of our town. Let me remind you, it cannot now be amended. If we reject it, we have to go back and start all over again. And in the meantime, we would be without any protection against the many developers who would like to develop within the parish boundary. Without a plan, Ham Road Abbey Fields, and many other sites within the parish will be vulnerable. We've already seen the neighbourhood plan used to turn down a plan for development at Ham Road, which would have put 250 houses to the north of the town, out on the marshes in an area which many of us believe is very prone to flooding. So, to protect our town for the future, to do the best that we can, to leave a vibrant community for our children and their children, please vote yes at the referendum on the 21st. Thank you for listening.